Welcome everybody to this webinar by PRGX. This is the first in this week's eSummit series on uncovering revenue with contract compliance. We have two more webinars scheduled over the next 2 days as part of our series, which you can register at PRGX's Bright Talk channel. We were hoping to present these sessions and join many of you in person at some of the procurement trade shows throughout the world, but hope in the interim we can provide you with some helpful tips and help your business throughout this challenging time through this online series. So today's webinar is how technology will impact your contract compliance program, presented by Sarah Clark, who's our Director of Product Development at PRGX, and our contract audit expert, Bob Donoghue. So taking 30 minutes out of your day to join us. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Firstly, if you have any questions, you can drop them into the question box you'll see. We'll do our best to address those at the end of the webinar. Also, if you're having any issues with audio or seeing the slides, then you can also put those in the questions box and we'll look to manage that. Lastly, you can look to follow PRGX on Twitter and LinkedIn to get more alerts on these upcoming webinars, and we'll make sure that you're included on them as we go through them. So we have two great experts on the contract compliance webinar today. Sarah Clark has been in the audit industry since 2008. She has played various roles in the contract compliance group over the years, building processes, improving efficiencies, developing tools and technologies, scaling the practice both geographically as well as into new service lines, and is now one of the leaders in our product development team, working on cutting-edge audit solutions, including contract compliance. And secondly, Bob Donoghue is affectionately deemed by our team as the godfather of contract compliance. He's one of the founding pioneers to define the process and methods to delivering contract compliance audits. He's focused on approaches to broadening the scope and depth, working to maximize program value, and he has been an advocate for technology-enabled solutions as the head of contract compliance in many of his roles. He comes to us with an abundance of expertise. Welcome to both of you, and Sarah, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thank you, Tim. Bob and I are excited about today's webinar. From when we first planned this up until today, things have changed quite a bit in the world. Teams have started working from home almost exclusively, relying on technology in more ways than we did in the past. As technology is becoming an even more critical component for contract compliance professionals, we wanted to talk today about three key concepts. The first, using technology to zero in on which vendors or spend areas to audit. Second, we'll touch on how technology is changing how we execute the work and some of the new ways we're able to stay on top of compliance, and not just post-payment, but also prepayment. And finally, we'll cover program management tools to effectively manage the effort. With that said, I'll turn it over to Bob Donoghue, who's been one of the most influential leaders in the contract compliance space, to talk a little bit more about the background and trends in contract compliance.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks to all of you that have joined us today. It's a pretty exciting topic for all of us. Me in particular, I've been doing this a long time, as you heard, pretty much routinely for 15 years, and while we've had lots of experience and lots of successes, the opportunities that are before us to leverage technology and expand programs are just immense, and that's exciting to me and to us. The reality is there's no question through the years that this is a proven area of opportunity for companies. All our clients, years and years of experience have informed us that leakage happens, financial leakage happens all too often. Given the complexity of contracts today, given the speed of business, given the burden on each and every one of us, not one job anymore, most of us are working 1.25, 1.5 jobs of the old days. It's just a fact that leakage happens. Things are happening so quickly, and knowledge transfer and such is more important than ever. But leveraging technology to building controls, do investigations, prevent overspend and leakage into the future is a real opportunity before us, and one that we're excited to talk about today. the fact is that through the past X amount of years, while a lot of our work and a lot of contract compliance reviews are focused on recovering funds, there's often contention around some of those issues, and it's never a totally pleasant experience when a supplier has to come forward with money that they did not budget, yet is due to a company, but still at the same time they didn't budget it, and so there is always a little bit of angst and contention around some of the issues. So the real ideal here is to move forward into a preventive mode and into the future, because there's not only the recovery opportunity of the past, but there's the future cost savings that are right there in front of us. When we recognize how some relationships have slipped a little bit, how financial leakage has occurred, we can build, again, controls put into place that will prevent that as we move forward. So the key is technology, how to apply it, and that's what we really want to talk about today.
Thanks, Bob. You are spot on. Technology is changing the landscape and allowing us to uncover more efficiently than we were able to in the past. When it comes to future cost savings, we're hearing more and more from our clients that although finding breakdowns is important, stopping them from occurring is equally, if not more important. Companies are faced with a lot of decisions, and even though the desire is there, organizations can find it difficult to gain the internal support required to close those leakage points. Leveraging technology, we're able to take the known breakdowns and project out the future cost savings, bringing transparency to the amount of money organizations would save on a year-over-year basis. This leads us to the second bullet point, program management tools. These tools track not only the execution strategy, which audits are planned for Q1 versus Q2, but also visibility into the audit lifecycle, the progress on each audit, what errors have been found, and how much savings have been generated. They provide a central repository for how organizations communicate with their vendors, their stakeholders, their audit firms, being able to review issues real-time, collaborating on them, and tracking how they're doing against their KPIs. Issue identification is another area, and it's been technology-driven from almost the beginning, originally in Excel spreadsheets and then Access databases, and now in more sophisticated solutions. They're able to run rule-based logic to programmatically identify and classify errors. Errors with standard ERP systems aren't always able to catch, as the data needed to run the rules is often more granular than what the traditional solutions have access to, allowing the advanced technology solutions to find those issues faster, bringing transparency to them, and getting them addressed quicker, saving companies thousands of dollars. These techniques can also be employed in the pre-event audits, which brings us to the next bullet point, where leakage is caught and stopped before the invoice is approved or paid. Layering the rules logic from issue identification on top of the invoice review process, technology can then be used to automate reviews of errors and breakdowns using the invoice line item details before money ever goes out the door. Pre-event tools have seen a recent boom in leveraging contract intelligence engines, where our tools can churn through hundreds or thousands of contracts and identify risky commercial terms, take those commercial terms and turn them into rules that then leverage artificial intelligence to further train the issue identification engines to hone in on not only the routine errors, but also ones specific to the commercial terms with that supplier. Contract intelligence not only empowers our pre-event solutions, it also helps effectively design audit programs by identifying the suppliers and approach to focus the efforts. Which brings us to the supplier risk scoring. What we've learned over time is that looking at spend on its own is not always a good indicator for financial risk. Leveraging the contract intelligence engine, a broader review can take place as the engine can scan the supplier contracts, pull out those risky commercial terms, then risk rank those terms, compare to spend, and turn out a comprehensive risk score. It's that risk score that can then be leveraged to drive targeted audit programs where a balanced risk portfolio can be achieved, both going deep and broad, depending on the supplier. To talk more about that, I'll turn it back over to you, Bob. I think we might have lost Bob's connection.
No, here I am. I'm back. Sorry about that. That was my bad. I'm here. So through the years, I've been asked by many, many procurement professionals, where do we start? We want to do this. We believe in it, but we don't know how to get started. So we try to keep it simple in these discussions and think about it as a 2x2 as presented here on the sheet, thinking about the spend involved with these supplier relationships, but also, and probably more importantly, the complexity of the contractual relationship. So what we want to do here is want to stratify a company's contract universe, the thousands, the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of contracts that they have. We want to stratify into at least 4 buckets. Those that are higher risk, that are high in complexity and higher in spend. Those that are medium risk that might be highly complex with lesser spend, and then the other 2 boxes is shown. That stratification then enables the focus that Sarah has been just speaking about. And if we use then the technology to identify the opportunities around risk and complexity, we can quickly stratify very large contract universes. And the way we do that, as Sarah mentioned, is by applying the technology to pick out specific keywords or key phrases within the contract universe so that we can winnow down that large contract universe into the buckets, especially the buckets of contracts that we believe are deemed worthy of review.
You're absolutely right, Bob. There is a lot involved in targeting financial risk. Using technology to not only assess the risks, but prioritize them into the different risk bands that you talked about. This approach enables organizations to customize how they approach their audit programs. Based on that specific risk profile of that supplier or where their risk score lies, it may make sense to go deep, possibly even sending teams on site to see firsthand if commercial terms are being adhered to or if a breakdown exists. In those riskier situations, doing a deep dive into the invoice details, the supporting timesheets, the equipment logs, and so forth, running it all through that risk identification engine at that deepest level to identify risks, possibly even systemic breakdowns. Though that kind of in-depth review, as we all know, has a cost associated to it. Not just the cost of sending teams on site, but the amount of time involved in that level of review. As a result, not all suppliers may be candidates. As you heard from Bob in the risk assessment process, moderate or lower risk suppliers, it may make sense in order to meet kind of the coverage targets. But to do broader reviews, running them through routine price checks and or contract diagnostic reviews. This allows teams to identify if contract language needs improvement or if pricing errors are uncovered without sacrificing coverage and while minimizing costs. As Bob described, there's a lot that goes into identifying the desired risk balance and how to optimally set up your program.
So now that we've decided that we want to actually run a program, we need to decide how we're going to execute the work. As Sarah mentioned, it's a real focus on risk. I've said the same. We can use the technology, but we need to understand how to get that technology to apply. And really, when we think about going broad across as many contracts as possible and deep into the most complex of contracts that are within a contract universe, the best way to apply technology here to help us stratify and focus is to put into that technology the experience that we have gathered over the years. And to do that, it's not only some of the complexity elements that I've discussed previously, which may include, is there an audit contract? Is there leverage with the supplier? How many suppliers are actually able to produce the capabilities, the goods and services that are required? That kind of knowledge and such that goes into the analysis, but also, as mentioned, some of the intelligence around the contracts, the language within the contracts, the key words and phrases. Are we looking at a cost-plus contract, which is typically very complex? So the contract types as well. And then as we move through various commodities, we know that some commodities are more difficult to manage than others, and when it really comes down to it, even specific suppliers that we have found in the past have some difficulty in maintaining compliance to their contracts. So it's applying all these kinds of intelligent components that will allow us to apply the technology across the contract universe, so better identify risk, and ultimately move us towards keying in on the issues that are required to be addressed.
Thanks, Bob. I want to talk a little bit about what we mean by going or reaching wider. We've discussed it a little so far, though reaching wider is a really powerful approach for organizations to meet their coverage KPIs while minimizing costs, which, as most of us have experienced, can be kind of a delicate balance. Reaching wider takes the intersection of contract intelligence engines and their ability to turn contract rate sheets and commercial terms into rules that can then be applied against each of the supplier invoices on a line item basis using artificial intelligence. We can then run error checks, whether in prepayment or post-payment implementation. Once the errors are identified, they can be taken through sophisticated workflow processes that can then handle the error routing, whether we want to do an autocorrect or something needs to route for human review, or maybe it even needs to go back to the suppliers to make the correction and resubmit. The power of reaching wider not only increases the coverage, but when applied to prepayment can mean almost immediate savings.
So in the past, contract reviews have traditionally been somewhat limited in the sense that without the application of technology, it was a manual process, which then, generally speaking, has focused on the most complex relationships. Most companies have said that's where the highest risk is. Let's focus there. And without the technology that is coming of age today, in the past, the work needed to be limited because you could only take on so much. Now that's changing. The game is changing. But even when we focus on deep dive contract reviews, we still need the manual element up front to enable the application of technology. And what do I mean by that? Well, historically, some of the most complex contracts that our clients have encountered and we've encountered on their behalf have many components with them that drive cost to our clients, okay? And as a result, that has required a lot of deep review, a lot of audit testing, and access to data that very rarely is within the four walls of our clients' enterprises. That data only exists typically at the supplier site. So it has been, as I mentioned, a manual, auditor-intensive kind of effort. The technology that we've applied in the past has been limited in use, but now the game's changing. And as we move to the present now and apply the technology as we're describing here today, we can move much more quickly, not only on the broad kinds of reviews, but on the deep reviews. And how do we do that? Well, typically the best way of doing that on a very complex agreement is to, in phase one, if you will, audit the old-fashioned way in a more manual environment where we're looking at 15, 20, sometimes 25 moving parts, components that drive cost to our clients. And those audits require a lot of customized and specific audit tests. But as we go through that effort the first time, and we understand now the complexities within the agreement, we can, if you will, save those audit tests. We can automate those audit tests, and we can put them into a bot and utilize technology so that in the future, after the first manual audit, we can drive automated audits. We can do that by leveraging those audit tests that have been created previously, and then requiring suppliers to provide the underlying data that they have not typically in the past provided with an invoice, but the data that will then enable real-time testing in conjunction with invoice presentation, and as Sarah mentioned, then enable us and our clients to determine if there's compliance variances prior to invoice validation and payment. So the path has become clear to us along the way that the application of technology is more than just for the broad scale audits. It can also be applied to the very deep and complex audits, albeit generally speaking with a fairly manual effort in step one, but then moving towards automation in step two.
That's great, Bob. It's amazing how many ways we can leverage technology. Outside of audit execution and program setup, another pain point we often hear from organizations is around effective audit management tools. Contract compliance audits have a slightly different workflow and life cycle than traditional audits, and organizations routinely tell us it's been hard for them to find solutions that meet their unique needs. In the early days, we ran into the same challenges. Trying to manage audits in SharePoint or Access, it was cumbersome and difficult to be efficient. But over the years, we've seen both our solutions as well as others in the industry become much more robust to the point where everything is online and sophisticated web tools. The tools that provide central repositories, not only for storing audit documentation, but also contract repositories for each vendor, capturing metadata on the vendor relationships and the errors identified. It enables organizations to a wealth of information on what the vendors or spend types, which ones have the most leakage, which contract language needs to be addressed, and so forth. From these, the system captures the management points, what we can do to stop the leakage. We have the ability to assign owners to those so that we can track progress on the corrections until we ensure that the leakage is addressed. With the future cost savings associated to those corrective actions, there's also a transparency to how much savings could be realized by making contract adjustments or other system adjustments, not just for analysis, but also for tracking it to resolution. Program management systems really empower users with on-demand reporting, allowing colleagues in your organization to have quick access to the progress of the audits, the impediments, the savings to date, and what work is queued up next. We've found the collaboration portal in our systems to be a huge efficiency gain, and we've heard it from other organizations, how important mitigating supplier abrasion with audits is. The collaboration tool allows not only organizations like yourself to connect directly with the audit team, but also vendors can see open items, open questions, issues being vetted, and have a direct channel to the audit teams to share information and close issues faster. Managing the breakdowns that are identified from start to finish can have an intricate workflow process. As an organization, you may need to review certain issues, and others you may want to defer approval to the audit team. In those cases, there's complex rules that can be set up to handle the issue routing effectively. The system can track the issues from concept through vetting with the suppliers, through the negotiations, all the way into settlement and then into recovery, tracking it the entire way to closure with a full audit trail to support. Program management tools are an important and powerful method to staying on top of the effort and making sure it's driving towards your goals.
So in conclusion, where do we go from here? Well, it's a fact. Leakage happens. We've unquestionably, through the years, leakage happens. And it will continue to occur unless we change the game. Again, the pace of business today is very difficult, and putting in the controls, and especially manual controls, is even that much more difficult. So leveraging technology is the key. And we got to leverage technology to identify how leakage is occurring, to understand what needs to be done to change the game, and then resolve those issues. The successful programs of the past have been limited. It has been too cumbersome, too manual, too full of lead time, and in some cases too much contention between clients and their suppliers. So as we move from a mindset of post-payment recovery, cash recovery, we have to move towards that mindset of prevention, catching it pre-invoice payment, and that is where our technology offers all these opportunities for wider scale programs, better management of the programs, a win-win for clients and suppliers, and really the breakout kind of move into the future that many folks desire and that all procurement professionals aim for.
Hey, thanks, Bob. Thanks, Sarah. That wraps up the main part of our presentation, and we now will turn it over to the audience for questions, and I'll pass it back to Sarah in a second. Just before I do, though, I just want to make everyone aware, if you do have questions, put those in the question box now. But tomorrow, we'll continue our eSummit series. Sarah will return to join us with John Daniels and talk through contract audit, the power of prevention, and moving your supplier audit program to a more preventative state. And then on Thursday, we'll be joined by Vijay Park, who will go through 5 key components of managing supplier contracts, and you can register those at the PRGX Bright Talk channel as well. So Sarah, I'll pass it back to you to manage those incoming questions.
Great, thanks, Tim. We do have our first question. It's, given technology, what do you think the order of magnitude increase in coverage can be? Bob, do you want to take that one?
Sure, thank you. Well, first I'd start with a little bit of past experience. So again, having been doing this for a while for a lot of large-scale enterprises, have a sense that generally speaking, when these programs are installed, the focus is on 20, 40, 60 supplier contractual relationships a year. It can be that limited because of the manual nature of the work in the past. Now, of course, it's been focused on the most complex relationships with the higher spend, so the return has been significant. Yet, we know in many companies, we're only scratching the surface against their full contract universe. So 20, 40, 60 of today can be literally hundreds of supplier contracts reviewed on a regular basis with the application of technology into the future, and turning already very successful financial programs of orders of magnitude in the millions and tens of millions of dollars into the future, and thinking about 10x kind of a number to apply against that is something that will wake up every procurement professional and probably wake up their colleagues in the finance area. So I think 5 to 10x order of magnitude through the application of technology is entirely possible as we look to the future.
Thanks, Bob. And we've got another question. What kind of changes have we seen as teams have started working remote almost exclusively? I can take that one, Bob. We have seen more teams start to work almost exclusively, especially with the coronavirus and some of the things going on in the current environment. With that, we've seen much more in terms of electronic collaboration. We've even seen more electronic whiteboarding, video and voice conferencing, as well as just more reliance in the audit management collaboration tools, as those allow vendors to do direct upload of data and documentation into the systems. Other things that we've seen an uptick in usage of the contract intelligence engines to tag the risky commercial terms and allow auditors the ability to interact directly with the tool to do their highlighting and bookmarking rather than have to download things offline or cart them to supplier sites, things like that. Most of this is now being handled electronically. We've also seen more scheduling of automated reports, whereas previously sometimes companies would download the reports and then use them in meetings. We've seen them do more sharing of some of those reports electronically. I've got one more question in. How common is it that you start deeper and decide to go wider or vice versa? Bob, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I think most of the time folks that we speak with in the procurement world are interested in the laser focus on the most complex high-spend relationships. So traditionally, the focus of the initial programs have been on the most complex relationships, so diving deeper. A lot of, as I've mentioned, manual effort required, a lot of auditor time versus technology time. But I think, again, over time that the programs have demonstrated that leakage does happen and that there is lots of opportunity. There's been a clamoring for more coverage. So through time, there are tools that have been developed. In fact, we've developed a number of them to begin to go broad. A broader audit typically is not as complex. It's maybe more around pricing or ties to third-party indices or such that can be automated with a database of well-defined benchmarks to audit data against. And so applying that capability in conjunction with some of these still auditor-led deep dives has enabled programs to expand. But what we're speaking about here today is accelerating on both fronts, accelerating the broad through even more automation on the less complex contracts, but also really I think that maybe the most exciting area is to apply technology to some of those deeper dive complex relationships through the path that we've described. And that's how we look forward to achieving 5 to 10x kind of increases in opportunity and increases in optimizing outcomes on behalf of our clients.
That's exciting stuff, Bob. I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so I think that's all of our questions, and I'll turn it back over to you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar.
Yeah, great. Thank you both. It was a great discussion. And if anyone does have any other questions, you're welcome to reach out to us at marketing@prgx.com. Otherwise, visit us at prgx.com and go to our Contact Us page, and we'll be able to follow up with you afterwards. Thanks for joining, and we look forward to you joining us at our upcoming webinars also.